Sarah up.
Sarah, good morning.
Good morning. Oh man, the bright morning sun is right there. Well, thank you guys for having me. This worship tonight was awesome. Can we honor our band? That was great. Yeah, I definitely needed to be reminded that I'm going to see a victory. Amen. Because my family has been going through some stuff. I don't have time to emotionally process that right in a second, so I won't give that all to you guys. But we've been going through some stuff with sicknesses, with deaths in the family, and so to know that God's going to win the battle, and then I love that this next song just tied right into it. God has no rival. God has no equal. He's just going to win. It's just hands down. It was like when my dad and I would play chess when I was like 4. Obviously, there was no competition there. He's just going to win. And so being reminded that God is that big and that powerful and that wonderful, really need that tonight. So thank God for worship. Well, I get the honor of finishing out the sermons that we've been having over the months of August, not October, August and September, which we've been calling Exit Ramp, getting off the guilt trip. And so these are going over steps 8 and 9. And so step 8 is, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And we've had a theme verse you're not allowed to see yet. Does anybody remember it? I got an of course, I've got a negative, and I've got a bunch of people staring back at me. So, it's okay. But next time, when I ask you, you better know. If you don't know, you're coming up here and you're going to recite it. Just kidding. So our verse for the last 2 months has been Romans 12:18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Now I know the reason you guys didn't remember it is because you saw the work that you had to do in this of as far as it depends on you, and you're like, easy way out, not doing that one. So that's okay. We're going to challenge that tonight. So stay tuned. So far in the series, we started off with getting off of the guilt trip. And so seeing what is getting in the way of us making amends, because sometimes we guilt ourselves. Sometimes we do things that hold ourselves back from the recovery that we're seeking. Then the second message we learned was stop letting fear take the wheel. And so how can we live in a way where we can also live at peace with ourselves? And so I know with me, I have a lot of anxiety. And so I need to figure out how to live at peace with myself. And so stop letting fear take the wheel in my life. The next one was how to say sorry. This one came from Pastor Trevor. He did a great formula of how to apologize. So if you missed that, go back and watch it because it was awesome. And I will do it no justice in 10 seconds. So go back. And then we did direct amends or living amends and how to figure out which ones to do and how to do them. That came from Pastor Curtis. And that living amends, if we don't start to live our lives differently, then we don't actually earn the right to do any amends because we just keep causing more and more harm. And then today, we're going to close out the series on what is harm. Because when we're doing our amends, and it says in the step 9, except when to do so would injure them or others, we need to figure out what does actually injuring them or others look like. And so if you just got here tonight or you've been listening and you're like, but why are we even doing amends? This is stupid. 1, we do the steps in order. So start back at step 1 before you jump into steps 8 and 9, or else you're totally going to be lost. But also, we do amends because it's not just about us. It's about how we can honor and love others. And so if you know Jesus, then the next verse will apply, 1 John 4:19, of we love because he first loved us. So we are showing love by offering amends to others because we are giving them the opportunity to heal from the harm that we have caused them. Because I don't know about you, but I can remember somebody who harmed me earlier in my life, and I can hold on to that pain until that person says, I'm so sorry I harmed you in this way. That's not, like, I didn't mean to hurt you, and go through the whole amends with me. But there's things I still remember. And so if I can still remember ways that people have harmed me, then I know there's people out there who can remember ways that I've harmed them. And so because God loved me, I get to love others by offering amends. And if you're not yet a Christ follower and you don't yet know who this Jesus is that we were just singing to, good job staying tuned until this point. Way to go. So something Pastor Curtis prayed to before he ever knew who God was the all good creating energy of the universe. And so there's a whole theology out there that I don't believe in, but it's out there and people believe in it. And so, but of like, if you put good energy out, then you get it back. And so you can just focus on how can you do good, because you also want to do good and you want to send good out. And so if you don't know if you don't have our higher power, Jesus Christ, yet, you still understand the concept of wanting to do good and people doing good things to you, right? Yes. All right, so the correct answer here is yes. Okay, cool. All right. I should put all the right answers so you guys could just read it. Like, remember have you guys ever been in one of those old theaters where they're like, applause? We'll get one of those up here. So we do it because we want to honor others above ourselves and not just be focused on ourselves. We also see this in, sorry, my notes are very small today, and so you might see a paper. Apologize. Also, let's see. Oh, yes, in Romans 12. So Romans 12, 1 through 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, so the mercy that has already been given to us, we get to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And so this, again, if you're a Christ follower, we get the opportunity now. God has set us free from our bondage, and now we are living our lives out to be obedient to him, because this is our true and proper worship. And so, yes. A lot of today's verses are going to be almost like they finish my sentences. So I'll like start a topic and then I'll point to a verse and it'll be like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense now that you said that. And so you guys are going to become very knowledgeable about the Bible today. Cool? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. You guys will be like, oh wow, yeah, the Bible makes so much sense today, because we're not reading from Revelation today. That was a topic. That wasn't the Bible reading plan recently. We're not going to throw up any Revelation. You guys are set free from that tonight. So we're going to honor others also with Matthew 5, 23 through 26. Therefore, if you offer your gift at the altar and there remember your brother or sister has something against you, so this is where we have wronged them, leave your gift at the altar, first go and reconcile to them, and then come and offer your gift. And come back. There we go. So, remembering that we have harmed them. So, for me, a lot of time in my recovery, I was blinded to how I wronged others. I was only focused on the ways that others had hurt me. That's all I focused on. This person did this person did that, all these wrongdoings. But when I'm choosing to honor others, it's when I stop and I reflect on how have I actually caused harm to others. And so that's where God finds it so important that we have relationship with each other, that he says, before you offer your gift, go and reconcile to that person. And so God's saying, I don't need for you to just come and praise me. I don't need you to just give more to the tithes and offerings. What I need is for you guys to live at peace with everyone, which is what we've been learning about all month long. So first, go and be reconciled. Also, because we're supposed to mend relationships. God created the very first relationship. You might remember it from Genesis, Adam and Eve. But remember, God created man and said it was good. But then he said, it's not good for man to be alone. I shall make him a helpmeet. And so we are supposed to be in relationship. We are supposed to be with each other and leaning on each other. If the whole time in our life we've just been running and hiding because of this relationship went bad, this person was mean to me, this state didn't work out for me, so I'm just going to move away. If we just keep running and hiding from all of our problems, we're not actually solving any of them. Because wherever we go, there we are. So if you don't know that yet, you'll figure it out when you get there. And you didn't even have to pack yourself. It just showed up. All that baggage, it came on. You didn't even have to pay extra for it. It just made it on the flight. So running away from our problems is not going to solve it. We have to actually deal with them. And so with me, a lot of the relationships that I ran away from my whole life came from my family of origin. And it wasn't just their actions. It was also my reactions. So when I re-entered those relationships, that's when I had to start making amends, because it was important to not just keep running. Because just like when the people I found here, I can find them anywhere. I can find the people that I'm running away from in any state, whether they're blood related to me or not. There are still the same crazy peoples in every area code. I promise. I have found some of them. Some live in West Virginia, some live in Kentucky. Just kidding. Not calling out any names. But yeah, so we're supposed to mend relationships, not just keep running away. And so Romans 13:8, I'm giving them a run for their money up there. So Romans 13:8, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. And so rather than me continuously running from things, I get to instead be indebted to loving others. And so when I'm making amends, I'm choosing to love them. I'm choosing to engage in the relationship. And then now I'm indebted to loving them instead of feeling, because for me growing up, I grew up in the church. And so for me, I didn't know all of the commands that the Jewish culture had created, but I at least knew about the 10. And I was pretty sure I was breaking all of them. And so, especially when Jesus did the Sermon on the Mount, and he's like, by the way, if you say you hate somebody, you just murdered them. And I was like, well, everybody's dead. Like, it was awful. So the commands, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not covet. And whatever command there may be, doesn't matter. All the laws made up are all summed up into just the one command, for us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And this also, when I first came back to recovery, loving others as myself, guys, I didn't love myself. And so I had to first learn how to love myself to be able to love others as myself. And the first thing that helped me with that was when I got a sponsor and she showed me how to have a relationship. She showed me what love was. She showed me that I was valuable. I was worth her time. Like I remember when I first came in the rooms and they're like, call people. And I was like, but I don't want to waste anyone's time. Like they're having a good day. I'm going to call them and just like word vomit on them. They don't need that. But when I started to see I was worth picking up the phone and that I was worth listening to and I was worth somebody doing life with me, then I could start to love myself. And then I saw, oh, they love me. I'm worth loving. Now I should love others the way I love myself and the way that I want to be loved. If I want somebody to pick up the phone when I'm in crisis, then I better pick up the phone when I'm in crisis. If I want to be in relationship with somebody, then I have to actually engage in that relationship. I have to actually go back and say, I'm sorry, and whatever the amend is that I need to make, because I love them too much to just let them flounder out in the universe. Like that's really what happened in my divorce. Was I was chosen to not be married anymore and then was left. And I had no ties to this person. And now I know there's somebody out living in the universe that exists outside of my existence. And anybody who I love, I don't want them to exist outside of my existence. I want to wish them a happy birthday. If I had to go the rest of my life without wishing my mom a happy birthday, I would be a very angry person. And so I want to be wished a happy birthday. I want to wish others a happy birthday. Love others as myself. And so rather than worrying about all of the different things I could have done wrong, choosing to love instead. So that's why we're making the amends. So how do we decide now if that amend can cause harm? So 1 Corinthians 13, 1-7, you guys might know it. It's the love chapter in there. We're not going to go through all the love stuff, but we're going to start off a little bit. So if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. if I have the gift of prophecy and I can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. And then love is patient, love is kind, and the like. But if we don't have love, it doesn't matter what we're saying. It doesn't matter what we're doing if we're not loving. And so when we are deciding to do our amend, the way we know if we're causing harm or not is this loving? Is this something where I would want them to make an amends to me for it? If the answer is no, or if the answer is right off the bat, I know that I would be causing harm, then talk to your sponsor. You might be causing harm, which is our next step, our next part of this. So ask your sponsor. I did go back and double check. Every single step says we in it. This is not an I program. This is a we program. So my stinking thinking earned my seat in here, and I could very easily justify why I don't need to make any amends and why they've wronged me and how this would harm them if I brought this up. But when I bounce it off my sponsor and I bounce it off my accountability, then they can actually dive into it. They can actually say, actually, I see this. I see if this had happened to me, maybe this is what I would want an amends for. So by engaging with our sponsor, they're also able to help guide us through whether or not this will cause harm. We also can look at what harm is not. And so harm is not hard. Just because it's hard for us. We think of things that are hard. What's something hard? Asking somebody to be our sponsor, that's hard. Folding and putting away the laundry, that's hard. You're all laughing because it's true. But just because making an amends is hard does not mean it's going to cause harm. Hard and harm are not the same thing. Also, just because it'll make us sad. Sad to remember how I've harmed somebody. I don't want to think about those yucky things I did. I've been forgiven by God, right? But I still need to go and make those amends. So just because it'll make me sad does not mean it's going to cause harm to myself or others. Sadness is not harm. Another thing that's not harm, inconvenient. Oh, well, they don't live here. Can't do it. It's inconvenient for me. No, does not make it harm because it's inconvenient for me. Or because there's consequences. So consequences for our actions are not harm. For instance, if, say, you or somebody you know and love owes money to somebody, paying it back is the consequence of them owing money. Just like if you wrong someone in the court system, you owe a restitution. This is a consequence. This is a how we make it right. And in the teaching that Trevor did on the sorry, the part of that equation was, how do I make things right? And so by making our amends, we're saying, how can I make things right? And so we will have some consequences. That doesn't mean we're being harmed. That just means there are consequences for the actions that we have done. Sometimes I know of multiple people in this program who, when they reached their amends, they had to turn themselves in to prison. They had to call up a court and say, I need to appear before a judge. And you know what's so cool? Is the two that I can remember, they were set free. They didn't have to stay. But they chose, I don't care what the consequence is, I'm going to make my amends. I'm going to turn myself in. I'm going to make right the wrong that I have done. So what are some examples of things that are harm? Because that's what all you guys want to actually know is, what's a checklist? So I can tell my sponsor, oh, it checks off all the boxes. I can't do it. So for all of you avoiding doing it, here's your checklist. Call your sponsor. Just kidding. What is harm? The first one is, don't be flippant of other people's feelings. So a way you'd cause harm is to be like, well, yeah, I crashed your car, but you just got a new one with insurance money. You're fine. Like, that's being flippant with their emotions. That was their dream car they saved up their whole lives for that they named Maria, and they did not want you to crash it. You know somebody's got a Mustang or something out there named Maria. It's a thing. So don't be flippant with other people's feelings while you're doing your amends. That will cause harm. Another one. Saying at the wrong time or place or in the wrong way that is not genuine. So if you're at a place in your own self where you're like, no, I didn't do anything wrong, then your emotions and the way you're going to say it is not going to be genuine. This is something where you need to say it in the right time and place. This is also time and place. It's not you just ran into them at the grocery store, haven't seen them in 30 years, and you're like, I'm so sorry I ran over your dog. Don't do it. That's wrong time and place. The emotions are not there. If you add in a clap, you're doing it wrong. You are causing harm. Don't do that. Also, revealing something to an additional party that may lead to additional hardship for them. For instance, this would look like you or I had an affair with someone, and now you call up their wife 10 years later after they've had 3 kids, and you're like, oh, so sorry, honey, I slept with your husband. No, don't do that. Don't do that. That will cause harm for her. No. So talk to your sponsor on how you can do a living amends so that you never engage in that behavior again. Because the whole point is that we are fixing the wrongs that we have done and moving forward in a way that we will not cause those same harm to the same people or others ever again, right? We've caused enough problems in our past. I used to walk through a room and they called me the Tasmanian devil. Now I see my kids and I go, I see, it comes back on me. Those little 2-inch wide hands can do a lot of damage. And that's what I did through my life. I did a lot of wreckage and a lot of damage. But there are some people who don't know that terrible thing has happened, and I don't want to go and cause additional hardship on them. That will cause harm. Another one, recklessly making a burden on someone's cross bigger. Sorry, that wording was weird, and I apologize. So we don't want to recklessly make somebody else's cross to bear harder. Everybody's bearing a cross every day. We all have our hardships. We all have our things we're going through. We all have whatever circumstances that we find ourselves in. We're not going out to make somebody else's life harder where now they have consequences that now they have to deal with. Where we're like, oh, so sorry, turned myself in for that bank robbery. I made sure to put your name down as the getaway driver. Like, that's not helping. That's not. Don't do that. Talk to your sponsor. Figure out how to do that. I don't have all the answers. I'll tell you right now. I don't have all the answers. I know the one that does. And it's not necessarily my sponsor, but it is Jesus. And my sponsor talks to Jesus. And so they figure out some answers for me. Also, selfishly getting something off of my chest so that I don't have to worry about it. Like, oh, yeah, I did that. So sorry. Now I feel better. I cleaned off my side of the street. See, I apologized. That will cause harm if we're just selfishly trying to clean up our side of the street, not having any regard for how it's going to affect them. And then the last 2, checklist. Blaming others for my part. So, well, I wouldn't have robbed the bank if you hadn't stolen all my drugs. No, we're not blaming anybody else. Our actions we take responsibility for. The big blame that I used to do was, well, my parents made me feel this way, so I had to act out in this behavior. No, that blaming is not making an amends. It's not making things right. And last one, pointing out what other people's part or taking their inventory. So if I go around saying, well, you did this, and you did that, and you did these 10, so I guess I'll apologize for my 2, that will cause harm. Don't do that. Bad way. So how do we avoid causing harm? First thing we always do, pray. Whether you believe in God or not, recovery always tells us to pray. That was the first thing I heard when I walked into the AA rooms. They're like, if you're not going to do anything else, you're not even going to come back to a meeting, every day just hit your knees and pray. Pray. That's the first thing we always do. Pray. Ask God, how do I do this? How can I not cause harm? What do you want me to do here? And Romans 12:18 reminds us, if it is possible. So it's okay if not all of our amends can be direct. So taking that pressure off, that just because I wronged these 700 people doesn't mean I have to go find these 700 people. So that's okay. Sometimes it will cause harm. Sometimes the people are dead. Some people we literally cannot make an amends to because they literally are not here. So if it is possible, but that's where we still need to try to live at peace with everyone. So how do we avoid harm? If it is possible, but choose to live at peace with everyone. We also look at our own actions. We take responsibility for what we did rather than blaming others. We empathize with how did that person feel in that moment. Curtis shared with us with tears last time of how when he had to write a letter to the person that he had harmed, he finally saw and empathized with the harm that he had caused. So by choosing to empathize and feel how they felt, that will help us to have a genuine and have a true amends with them rather than just being flippant with their emotions. Also, make sure to role play with your sponsor. This is a really big thing because there were some amends that I just wasn't ready at the time to make, but I did need to make as direct amends. So if I did at the wrong time and place, I would have caused harm. But by role playing with my sponsor, we were able to see what needed to be fleshed out so that I could do it well, because the whole point of the amends process is us doing our part. It has nothing to do with them. So there will be people we apologize to that we say, I'm so sorry this happened. And they're going to say, darn tootin', you did that wrong. And they're just going to tell us that we did it wrong. Or worse. But it's not about their reaction. It's not about how they respond. And so by role playing with our sponsor and our sponsor being the devil's advocate really helps. Also, we need to be humble, open, and willing to make those amends. So like we talked about with the restitution, if we're not willing to pay the restitution, we're probably not ready to make the amends. And so to do the amends well, to not cause more harm, make sure that you are ready, that you're able to do it because you're humble, open, and willing to do something different. And don't get defensive. Your sponsor will talk to you about that too when you're doing your role play. When they say, but you did this, and don't forget to also apologize for that. Don't be like, no, I did it. No, don't get defensive. Causes more harm. And the last part of how to avoid the harm is understanding the underlying condition that caused us to harm them in the first place. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to have all the answers, but figuring out what was the thing that made me do that? What was the thought process that I had? What were the feelings? Because if I'm choosing to make an amends, I'm also choosing to do a living amends by not repeating that. So if I don't know what drove me to do that in the first place, I definitely can't apologize for it because I won't know what I'm actually apologizing for. If I'm lying and I don't know that I'm lying to try to keep myself safe because in situations that's been necessary and I just say, I don't know why I keep lying, but I keep lying and I'm sorry. Like instead seeing, oh, I was lying because I was trying to protect myself. I see that I can be safe with you, I can be vulnerable with you, and I can bring my full self to you, that you are a safe place. By doing an amends like that, that is going to have such deeper impact than just saying, I'm sorry for lying. So how did it work out for me? So I've got a couple of situations to share with you tonight. So one was with a loved one that my sponsor and I, we wrote out the letter. She lived far away from me. And so I couldn't see her in person. She was different time zone, like 12-hour difference. So we couldn't talk on the phone, but I wrote the letter and I sent it to her. And after that, her response was silence, and that's okay. I chose that I did my part and I let go of the rest. But after that, we were able to have communication. We get to engage in family functions. She's taken care of my children at different times. And so I was able to make an amends. It didn't go, all the beautiful fairy tale ways that I wanted it to go, but we were able to have a relationship afterwards. And I get to wish her happy birthday because, those are important. Which, if you don't know, today's Curtis's birthday, but we always choose to be sick on our birthdays, I guess. So he's homesick. We love you, Pastor Curtis. And so others. So when we're talking about harm done to others, sometimes that means somebody else's amends might feel like it's going to cause harm to me. So Curtis, at a time in our marriage, found out that there was actually a bench warrant for him in another state. And he was one who had to call up the court system and go, I just discovered when I had my background check run that I have a bench warrant and I need to make this right. And so the judge said, call your old, whatever it's called, attorney, whatever those people are. Call your old attorney, get it figured out. So he did. And guys, I thought him doing his part of making his amends was going to cause harm to me and my family. We're going to lose our house, going to lose this job. We don't have money for this. My kids are going to grow up without a father, like all the things. But those are not harm. That was not him causing harm. And so this is something that he needed to do for his recovery. And just because his consequences would have been hard, not harm, hard, doesn't mean for him not to do it. So he did it, guys. He did a Zoom court appearance. The judge was like, hey, you want to pay this money and not ever have to go to jail? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, great, send this lady the check. Done. Totally done. And God had already, what was so cool is God had already figured out all the money. God had already figured out all this stuff. His attorney used to be just a public defender, now had his own practice, was a believer before the court had even started, prayed over Curtis, prayed blessings over us and our family. Like God had already figured out all the details so that when it was the right time and the right place and he was doing it in the right way, that the amends could be made and restitution could be had. And now we get to live free, knowing that there are no more warrants. They're all done. It's wonderful. True freedom. So, to wind us all back up and what we just learned, it was the whole reason we make amends is because we want to love others. We want to love them well. Making an amends honors others above ourselves. Figuring out when an amends will cause harm, do it with others, not by yourself in a vacuum. And the first step to making any amends, building any relationship, is to also have a relationship with God. So if you don't know yet who your higher power is, here at Community of Hope, we call him Jesus Christ, and we love him very dearly. And if you don't yet know who he is, I would love to talk with you afterwards. So come and find me so we can talk more about Jesus because I love him. Yay! Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I really just tried to talk to the mic with my book. Sorry. Okay, thank you for sharing that so much, Sarah. Amends is weird. It can be a little tricky, a little confusing, definitely hard. I remember when I had to start making a few amends for the first time, I definitely thought that if it's hard, I'm going to harm somebody. So for me, it was, okay, but if I tell them this, I'm absolutely going to hurt their feelings, and that's harming them, and that's not okay. Or they're now going to know something that I did, and it's going to hurt their heart. That's also not, I guess maybe sometimes, but that's why you talk to your sponsor about that. But in my situation, I was scared of the consequences. I was scared of feeling that pain again. I was scared of harming them because whatever I did that they didn't know about, it was, well, what is that saying? That. But with me making that amends, they would now know about it. So I had to sit down with my sponsor and really have a real conversation. And I got to the bottom that, no, that's just my fears. They actually did know. Or, whatever. So that was my fears that I had to figure out. And another one that I really liked tonight was understanding the underlying conditions. So for me, if I don't understand why I repeatedly was doing what I was doing, and I make an amends for that, it's not genuine. Because I'm going to do it again, period. And if my actions don't change with my amends, that is not a true amends for me. So I need to make sure that I understand the underlying conditions. So thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. That was really, really helpful. Okay, so in a second we are going to dismiss to our groups. But before that, I want to let you know that if you would like to give back to this ministry, you can do so through the app that I mentioned earlier, or we'll have people back here standing. You can also give back that way, or you can serve on this team. We would wonderfully accept the help at anything you want to do. So give back those two ways. And then so in a second when we release, we're going to have women on my right, your left, open, share, and chemical dependency. And then we're going to have the same rooms on my left, your right. So that's all I have for you. So if you guys want to stand up, and we will say the Serenity Prayer together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, so that I'm... Matt, if I surrender to your will. So that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.